Hello. Today I want to talk about a couple of articles that I've seen in the press this last week showing how the government spends some of our money, quite a lot of our money, in fact. But before I do that, I'd just like to comment on one or two of the stories that have been in the post in the press in the last week or so. Now, you'll remember that Fujitsu were the people that supplied the faulty computers that resulted in countless postmasters being completely ruined, bankrupted, and a lot of them haven't gone to prison, and an absolutely enormous scandal. Well, nicely, I think it's rather nice anyway that they've been forgiven, because HMRC have just given them a government contract for £67 million to provide computing services, and I suppose we just have to hope they don't screw up on that as well. But as I say, it's nice that they're forgiven, despite the fact that there are countless former postmasters and mistresses who are still waiting for settlement. Now, Thames Water has been in a lot of trouble lately, and I'm delighted to be able to tell you that they've managed to get a loan of £3 billion, and it's at 9.75% interest. And of course, the customers will pay that interest because, the company, the shareholders aren't going to want to. I mean, they've had their dividends, haven't they? They've had billions out in dividends over the years. And so that's all sorted out. That's all nice, and they'll be able to continue to own it, all these Australians and Canadians and whoever it is that currently owns Thames Water. Now, the energy network, that's the pylons that carry all the cables all over the country, and the gas pipelines and so on, are all owned by the National Grid. The National Grid is a British, a multinational company. The only British part about it is that it's in Britain because it's completely owned by foreigners, of course. And the major shareholders are people like BlackRock and Vanguard and Merrill Lynch and JP Morgan, who are all Americans, and Macquarie of Australia, who made such a mess of water. They're now involved in the electricity distribution. And there was a mistake. It was Ofgem made a mistake when they were calculating interest payments and so on. And as a result, the National Grid made a windfall profit of £3.9 billion. And that's lovely for all these foreign shareholders. I mean, it wouldn't do to give that money back to the customers. No, that would be absurd. So it's nice to know that in our utilities everything goes just fine. In other news, trade with Ireland last year was down 16%. It was down from 38 billion to 32 billion. That's a drop of 6 billion. And of course, this has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Brexit. It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's all to do with COVID, I think, and maybe Putin and the weather and all sorts of other things. The tourism industry, which is a very important industry in the UK, that's expected to be 9% less than it would have been this next year. This is partly because we now insist that Europeans coming here have proper passports like we have, and they can't use their identity cards anymore, and we're charging them a £16 visa fee to come here. Jolly good bargain, I reckon. And it's said that the delays at the borders and the fact that we're seen as a less friendly country these days, because obviously we don't like Europeans, we made that perfectly clear. These are deterrents to people coming here. And so, as I say, the tourism industry, a very important industry, is going to be expected to be a lot lower this year. In terms of other things to look forward to, we know that in April, gas and electricity prices are going up 5%. I mean, these foreign owners of our gas and electricity companies they've got to make money, they've invested, and employers' national insurance is going up in April, which means that employers will be less inclined to take people on and probably want to get rid of people, I would imagine. And council tax is also going up in April, and we know that inflation is now up at 3% again. So it looks as though it's going to be a tough year, really, and I think we should all or be prepared for that. And finally, of course, as I say every week, food shortages are coming because Europeans are going to become more and more reluctant to come to this country. We've already seen how the quality of food and the amount of food in supermarkets is deteriorating all the time anyway. Age UK, the charity, said that 3 out of 4 old people, that's 9 million people, say that they cannot afford to heat their homes as much as they would like to. So all in all, things are not looking all that bright, are they? If you look at the overall situation, the NHS is in crisis, and there are still millions waiting for treatment. As I said before, old age pensioners are freezing. Children are going to school hungry. Food banks are bursting at the seams. Schools are falling down. Need a lot of money spent on them. We've got potholes in the roads. We've got councils going bust. The universities are going bust. We've got police are barely able to respond to crime, and it's hardly worth even bothering reporting most crimes these days. We've got businesses going bust right, left, and centre, and all in all, it's looking a bit grim. But as commentators say, and my commenters say to my videos each week, it's nothing to worry about because it's worse in Germany. Germany's bankrupt, and France is completely bankrupt. In fact, the whole of the EU is completely bankrupt, which is why it was such a good thing that we left and took back control, and we now have our sovereignty. And all this at a time when it seems, given the international situation, that we should be spending a lot more, and we're going to have to spend a lot more on defence. But I wanted to talk really about how we spend overseas aid. Now, I'm totally in favour of overseas aid. I think it should be directed towards feeding people, and it should be directed towards education. And it's a responsible of any first world country, although we're only just a first world country now, frankly. But it's our responsibility to help poor countries. But the problem, I think, is how the money we spend is actually spent. And what I'm about to tell you now, this list I'm going to give you, was something that someone sent me from the Sun newspaper. I checked one or two of the figures, and I wasn't absolutely happy that they were entirely accurate, but then I saw exactly the same article, almost exactly the same figures appearing in a second article in the Daily Mail a few days later. So I thought, well, between them they must have checked them. So these are figures from the the Sun and the Daily Mail, and they'll give you some idea of what we're spending our foreign aid on. We spend about 15 billion a year. 114 million goes to inclusive green enterprises in India, 25 million for green urban growth in Somalia, 38 million for green growth in Nepal, and in Nepal, I'll give you a bit more information about Nepal, because we seem to spend about £200 million there over a 5-year period. And these are some of the things we're spending that money on. We have a 6-year program where we're giving £6 million a year to generate economic growth, expand businesses addressing income poverty in Nepal by supporting and financing small and medium-sized enterprises and improving their productivity. Now, isn't that what we need to spend money on in this country? Business here are desperate, and we're spending money on helping businesses in Nepal. It doesn't really seem to be a priority to me. This money, we all know this money, when you give money to these countries, it's very often that they'll end up buying a nice new office, and they'll get a car, and they'll want to go around visiting, and they'll want to go to conferences and things. In all this money, I mean, how much of it will actually result in starting new businesses in Nepal? I mean, it's very questionable, isn't it? I mean, it's, if we were very, very rich, it's not so much of an issue, but when we are so desperately poor. There's a 7-year program. It's £12.5 million a year. That's supporting Nepal's subnational governments to address local infrastructure needs through inclusive government processes. What about our infrastructure needs? What about our potholes and everything else that's falling down? There's another 6-year program in Nepal to attract foreign direct and climate investments and private sector investment to resilient cities. And finally, there's a 7-year program, £5 million a year, to help the justice system. I'm just not quite sure that's where we should be spending our money right now. There's 9.5 million for accountability and inclusion in the Congo, which is it seems to be a war zone. 4.1 million championing inclusivity in plastic pollution. 1.9 million to create jobs in Albania to stop them coming here. 4.4 million to improve Albanian prisons, including 15 electric cars and 22 minibuses. Is that where our money should be going? The idea, I think, is that we should send some of the people, the Albanians who are in our prisons, a very large number of them, we should send them back to Albania. £500,000 for a directory of women's affairs for the military of Jordan. £473,000 for criminal justice advisor for Somalia. 264 for studying disinformation in Ethiopia. 233,000 to study mental health research in Colombia. 133, this is an important one, 133,000 studying shrimp health in Bangladesh. 110,000 gender disinformation conference in Enya. I'm not sure quite where Enya is. I was a singer. And 44,000 to study Thailand's alcohol policies. I actually happen to be in Thailand at the moment, and I don't think there's much of a problem with alcoholism here. It's hardly anybody seems to drink. And the government gives away other money, not only in foreign aid. For example, they gave £841,830 for a study, the Europe that gay porn built between 1946 and 2000. I'll say that again. The Europe that gay porn built between 1946 and 2000, that got a grant of £841,000 when there are children starving. 1.4 million went to diversifying participation in English folk singing. £805,796 digital repatriation of the Gaydon Liu collection from the UK to India. £247,000 for Exeter University for a project on queer natures, animals, environment and modern sexual knowledge production, including attitudes in pre-1930s Germany. 1.1 million for the University of Sheffield to probe intersectional inclusion. And 1.1 million for Royal Holloway University to study inclusive histories. There's a firm called Inclusivity, and they received £214,330 to study whether AI robots could help in making companies more accessible to non-binary and LGBT minorities. But one that I thought was quite interesting was £192,922, that's nearly £200,000, spent by Coventry University to study ontology and ownership of internet dance, particularly regarding TikTok. And this is worth looking at. The brief states that as a result of the COVID lockdowns, there were new forms of dance which have raised questions about how online dances are understood, described and exchanged. It claims to produce expertise on dance that occurs online more than ever before in new and experimental formats, including TikTok. Questions it seeks to answer include: what kind of thing is an online dance? Is dance online a different thing to dance offline? And do the aesthetic and cultural histories of dance forms mean each produces a different kind of thing, or are all online dances one kind of entity? Is money well spent? It's just £200,000 to figure out this. I mean, I lay awake at night. I was going to start next week's video with a ballet, but this just confused me. And how does dance's ontology, that's its being, shape social practices around ownership online? And finally, how can ontological understanding support artists when sharing work online? That's where we're spending our money. And with this sort of crazy waste of time and money, As I say, I totally support foreign aid, but I think it should be aimed at education. It should be aimed at medicine and health care and so on. But all these other things, studying shrimp health in Thailand or Bangladesh or wherever it was, and all this other stuff, it's just such a waste of money. And you wonder how many people, how many thousands of civil servants are involved in dealing with all these grants. And how many of these people are just con people, just getting these grants? And I just think it's just our priorities are so wrong about so many things. We have an economy which is in free fall. It's desperate. We've got an extremely dangerous world, especially now, and all this is going on. But anyway, many people won't agree with me, and so be it. But that's what I think about it. If you watch this far, thank you very much indeed, as always. And until next week, thanks again, and bye for now.